Oh, welcome. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for rugby prediction and opinion. And joining me today to discuss the Major League Rugby final is Rob. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Not so bad, not so bad. See you in the games room with some nice jerseys, framed jerseys behind you on the wall there.
I call it the dungeon.
The dungeon,
It's where I get stuck when I'm in trouble.
When you get down there, that's where you belong. There's lots of talk about this being a close game and coming down to defences, and that's exactly what we had, wasn't it? We had lots of defence, especially early from Seattle and their Seawolf.
Yeah, and the pressure seemed to, at different times of the game, crack both teams, and that ended up being sort of the difference in the game. Ultimately, was who cracked the most times, but early on, especially Seattle was absolutely suffocating on defense. Glendale, I was actually thinking about it at halftime. Glendale, I wonder what we're not sophisticated enough in America to have these sorts of stats yet, but I wonder what the gain line percentage was for Glendale, particularly in the first half. Whatever it wasn't very high. And line breaks. All of these things were near zero for Glendale. Seattle's defense was just outstanding.
Yeah, but for a game that was about defence, I thought. We saw Seattle kick three early on to score the first points of the game, and I thought this might turn into a bit of a kicking competition, but that didn't happen. That was the only penalty of the day that went over, and instead it was line-out mauls became the story of the first half.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, that's all there was, right? There was a bunch of tackling and the occasional driving. I don't want to say driving ball on here. There was a bunch of tackling and the occasional a drive over the try line. That was just about it.
Yeah, and penalties were a big. Discipline was a big thing in this. I counted as 8 in the first half to Glendale, to Seattle 2, and Glendale really were having problems at the breakdown. So the Seattle were definitely winning the breakdown battle, slowing the ball down for Glendale, which meant they couldn't get front foot ball, and also pilfering it occasionally. And they weren't great at Seattle. Weren't great at retaining the pill themselves, but they definitely were causing Glendale a lot of problems.
I'm going to tell you, at the end of the day, I'm going to credit the Seattle pressure for just about all of that. It took Glendale a little while to get into the game in terms of handling early on. Then it took Glendale a while to figure out how to possess the ball for more than a phase or two. And then in the second half, as that pressure just kept coming and coming and coming, Glendale started to crack. They started making mistakes that they hadn't made the entire season.
Yeah, and whilst their kicking was had more length in it, the Glendale made up for that with their kick chase, which made their kicks effective, and also I've just gone blank as to the fullback for Seattle, who got named in the CBS 15 of the season, but his positioning was good today.
Yeah, that was Mr. Turner. Yeah, he had a try somewhere along the line and kicked well. He played the Seattle. I don't think you can point to anybody on Seattle other than the flanker whose name I'll butcher if I try to pronounce it, who tried to make a rather unfortunate kick, but even he played pretty well. I was going to say, I don't think you point to anybody on Seattle and say, that guy played poorly.
No, I think and thankfully we didn't have. I think it was a good game of rugby. There were spilt balls, but they were generally because of hard tackling. As you say, this generally wasn't about player errors, which is good. So I'm just bringing up the player list so I can remember the players who you're talking about. Toluita.
See, that's why I didn't do
it. Was the easy for you to say was the player who did that. But before we had that, we had 2 disallowed tries in the first half. It looked like Seattle had got a great break off the line out, except that player we've just been talking about ran a fantastic blocking move that will get him an NFL contract to open the space for the break, and so the try got disallowed, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think some of the Seattle types on Twitter were too happy with that call, but it seemed like a reasonable call. The defender was trying to find that channel, and yes, our good friend wearing number 7 for Seattle, he found the defender before the defender found the ball carrier.
Yeah, and I was looking at it thinking, yeah, okay, fine, he's bumped the guy, but he's quite a long way from the ball, and then suddenly the pass has come back inside, and it's like, yes, that's exactly where that guy would have been standing.
Yeah.
Suddenly, yeah. If the play had kept going out wide, they'd have been fine. But because they played that inside ball, it was clear why that happened. And then Mr. Davidson getting involved in, or Harley Davidson. Let's use the best name in Major League Rugby, his full name. Getting involved in another line-out maul, or at least just after it, down in the 5-metre line, but just drops it over the line again. So another try disallowed. Very close there for Glendale. So both sides had one knocked off the off the ledger.
Yeah, the Glendale one was probably a little more obvious, but and actually you mentioned Mr. Davidson. I thought he was going to be a really big factor in this one, and he was very quiet.
He was. He didn't get given. He wasn't allowed space. Glendale really didn't kind of get the ball out wide much. I think they've spent a lot of time in the middle because it was relatively slow ball, and they didn't feel they had the opportunity to go wide too much, I don't think. And you say that pressure really caused some problems when they tried to go wide, and we saw them throwing the ball into touch occasionally as well. But my sort of last comment I had from my first half notes was Seattle showing lack of respect for the pill and letting Glendale off the hook in Glendale's 22, and then turning it over in their own half as well, which meant that Glendale had opportunity close to the second end of the first half, but they couldn't take it, which meant that Seattle had that narrowest of leads, 7-8 at half time.
Yeah, and Seattle had an opportunity. At halftime, I thought this was one of those games where Seattle had dominated the first half enough that they needed to have a larger lead, and I actually kind of thought Glendale was going to go into the sheds and come out and find it, and the opposite actually happened. So, credit to Seattle for being consistent. They were stellar defensively in the first half. They were stellar defensively in the second half, and it just took 50 or so minutes for Glendale to finally start cracking. And when they did, the seawall fell over on top of them.
Yeah, and Glendale had the better of the opening of the second half. Another line-out maul try, which is going to be okay. This isn't going to be a kicking in threes. This is going to be line-out maul tries. I thought, and then they had that turnover, kick downfield, as you say. Everyone's scrambling for it, and Big Afro shakes his leg at it. Doesn't really connect. Really should have just dived on the ball in that situation, but obviously had seen maybe been watching Super League Rugby, Super Rugby, sorry, because we had a few forwards kicking the balls again for the Hurricanes last night, and yeah, he made the wrong choice, and suddenly he had about 7 Glendale players flooding through, and the Seattle players just hadn't got back quickly enough.
Yeah, that was sort of inexplicable. I'm with you. I don't understand. Wasn't really anyone around him. I don't understand why you don't just take those big mitts and fall right on that ball, and even if you have to eat it there, that's better than taking a swing at it missing. Yep.
He's a young guy by the sounds of things, so he'll learn from that.
And to his credit, he did plenty of positive things after that. It wasn't like he made this titanic mistake and went into a shell. He played really well from then on.
Yep, absolutely. We saw him, getting very active, say carrying with ball in hand, and also at ruck time. And then, as you say, it all fell apart then on just before the hour mark. Glendale kept giving up these penalties, and if you're going to do that, you're going to give up territory, and another line-outs deep in the 22. But instead of a maul, it ends up a couple of phases later in the opposite corner for a try. And, we had the TMO looking at it for a long time to see whether we actually got it down or not. It was a bit touch and go.
Yeah, unfortunately, the camera work's kind of a bit touch and go, so it was a little tough to see. Um, the announcers all seemed fairly certain that was a try. I wasn't so sure. I wasn't so sure that ball actually had any downward pressure on it by the time it hit the mat, but nobody asked me, so I counted.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the commentators are going, "Oh, the 4,000 fans in here think it's a try. We think it's a try." And it's like, none of you matter. At the end of the day, there's one guy in the middle, and it's his choice. They made the comment later on that he is the sole arbiter of what is right and what is wrong on that pitch, and it comes down to him.
Yeah, I suspect, and I think Scott Green's a Kiwi. I suspect the Southern Hemisphere folks would like him because he was decisive. There were a couple of instances where you thought he might go to the TMO, and he said, "You know what? Nope, I'm happy with what my AR tells me happened." That seems to be one of the criticisms I hear a lot about in Super Rugby, where we're always at the TMO and it's always 5 minutes for a stoppage. Scott Green had a pretty good night and was very decisive.
He was. I think it helps. I mean, a couple of things. You've already said the camera work legally isn't the best, and there aren't that many cameras either. So there aren't that many angles that you can go to the TMO for. So what's the point if you've got someone who's got a pretty good view actually on the pitch, because the TMO is unlikely to have much of a better view than you have. And secondly, about half the games I think it is in this tournament haven't had TMOs, or probably even more than that.
Yeah.
I think it's only the CBS games, which is sort of one game a week, that's had the TMO. The other two games that have been on ESPN haven't, from memory. So I think there's also that element that he's probably used to not having a TMO for most of the games.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably, one of the things they got to clean up. I think I tweeted this somewhere along the line during the game. I actually watched the semifinals with one of my brothers-in-law who actually is in the filming business. And he's not much of a rugby guy, but I had him sitting down and watching the semifinals. And let's just say he wasn't terribly impressed with the camera work. He was throwing around terms that I didn't understand, so I won't repeat them. But suffice it to say, there's some pretty obvious improvements that can be made in year two, and that the production is definitely one of them.
Yep, and I think one of the points that we made in the chat had with Grant after the semi-finals was that the amount of money that they'll have available for the production next season is going to go up. They've had some very good ratings, which means they may not be having to pay CBS anymore to have to screen it next season. And if CBS suddenly decide they're actually going to pay to screen it, they're going to have better camera work on the grounds.
One would hope so. Some of it's not a money thing. It's just using. Again, I'm borrowing from my brother-in-law, but according to him, a lot of it's just using the equipment properly.
Exactly. But if you're paying for if you pay for a $50 guy to use a piece of equipment, and you pay for a $500 guy to use a piece of equipment, the $500 guy is going to use it better.
Oh, Paul, are you suggesting that people are motivated only by money?
No, I'm just saying that if you're good, you demand more money.
That's fair.
So yes, maybe that was one of the other things. We then had one of the few breaks of the game with Tiberia making a break down the left. He managed to get outside and spotted the mismatch, which is one of those things that good players do. Brilliant supporting line run by the number 8 from Seattle. I've got blank as to his name. So he's there, and so I just had a message on Skype from Grant. Grant is available as well. So let me just bring Grant in on the call as well. I didn't realize he was going to be available.
I'd vamp in the meeting.
Okay. So I'm sure he'll be joining in a second. But yeah, so great line by the number 8, which was Hatting, who for that one. It was good to see. Apparently, he's only joined Seattle recently, so it was good to see him run that line and get and score in the corner. Mr. Hatting, the number 8 for Seattle. But I thought he hadn't been with Seattle the whole time. That's what it was. Well, uh, it's I've got your voice, but not your picture. So that's good enough. Yep.
How about that now?
That's much better. Yes.
Oh no, Rob, who are you?
Who am I? It's me,
I'm
Rob.
not met. No, but I mean, you probably got another name online that I don't know.
Oh, my Twitter feed is Rugby in America.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So
give me a second. I've got some information here on Hattig. So Hattig, he came back to play the semifinals and the finals. He played the first match for Seattle. Started the first match. Started the fourth match for Seattle, and then he got another niggle then, and then he came back and played the semifinal and the final. Hattig also played for the Ohio Aviators in pro rugby, and he also played for the Austin Blacks before then. He played in both of their D1 men's national finals runs where they lost in the finals both times.
See, it's nice having a professional on the show.
Reichert's been a big he's been a rising star here in the U.S. and I think once he finishes this year, he's eligible to be an Eagle.
So he's okay. So he's on the residency pathway.
Yes. Yeah, and once he finishes this year, like I think his first year here with Austin Blacks, he went back to South Africa for too long. So his first year here, he was here on like a holiday visa instead of an O1, and then his second trip over, he came over on an O1, and now he's here on a P1. So his extended visa was on a P1, and so after this, he's actually here, and he's a resident, and he can actually be an Eagle after this.
So someone may be looking towards the Rugby World Cup.
Yes, he actually is. And if you've ever watched him play, like I've probably seen, I want to say over 800 minutes of him playing, and he's actually got that in his back pocket.
So you think he'll walk into the in the Eagles squad?
He'll push for a spot, that's for sure. He won't walk in, but he will push for a spot. He's going to make Cam Dolan run for his money.
And with Cam being overseas, his availability maybe not as much as well, which might help.
Well, Cam's not overseas right now. He's at San Diego.
But I thought at the end of this, I thought he'd signed for Ealing Trailfinders next season.
Oh, I didn't see that yet.
I got the wrong, or am I thinking of someone else? Maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
Well,
maybe it's Bryce Campbell.
Let me see. Terry didn't tell me this. If he did,
I may have say sorry. I may have got the. I may have got. Might be getting my names mixed up.
Oh, don't get me wrong. That could happen. I just don't know. No, I don't see anything, and I just messaged his dad. His dad and I have a good relationship, so I'll know here in a few seconds.
No, I think maybe I'm being mixed up. I say with another player, but yeah, no, he had a good game today with ball carrying and a great, a great support line for his try in the corner.
Are we live now? Are we recording now?
Oh, yes, sorry, we're recording. We're live, yes.
Okay, good. I just didn't know.
Sorry, no, we're sorry. We're already we're probably 10 minutes in or 50 minutes in before you joined.
Excellent. Let's keep going. So yeah, Reichard's definitely somebody who's going to be pushing for a spot on the Eagles side.
So for those of you watching, this is how we chat off air as we do on air as well. So yes, we do. And those two tries to come back, I'll be honest, surprised me. I tweeted out, I was watching on Facebook Live, and I put on Facebook Live after the when it was 19-8 that I thought that was game over. I thought Glendale had it in the bag because I hadn't really seen Seattle get that many scoring opportunities, and they didn't seem to be able to break down Glendale. So anyway, Rob's reckoned it's been the pressure that the Seawolves was applying to Glendale, just to mention made Glendale crack. But Grant, how did you see it? What do you think was the thing that made them crack after the hour?
So I don't really think Glendale cracked, honestly. I think Glendale played a great game. I think Seattle just stepped up and played a better game because Seattle had to, because note that Seattle did not have a coach up in the stands. Their coaches, in fact, and as Dan Power was saying, their coach was on the field. They coach by committee, right? So their whole coaching staff was on the field playing at the time. And if anybody's ever tried a player coaching approach to any kind of game, much less pro rugby, which I would never suggest this to anybody. And at the beginning of the season, when I heard that Seattle was trying this after Tony Healy was on the rails, I thought Seattle's done for. They're going to be bottom of the barrel, right? That was my first thought.
If we went back and looked at my predictions for the earlier in the prediction shows earlier in the year, my predictions were basically that Seattle would lose because basically their coach had been not allowed to come back from Canada.
Rob, what's your thoughts on that? What were your thoughts at the beginning of the season?
I thought Seattle was going to be fairly good just because, as important as coaches are, the players play, and the Canadian internationals that Seattle had, I thought would be really good. They've got, as the announcers mentioned during the game, they've got a number of veteran-type players playing basically up the center of the pitch, right? Play your 2, your 9, your 12, your 13. These are all really experienced veteran guys that know what they're doing. Coaching helps, but if you're not going to have a coach, that's about as good a setup as you can get, right?
So, Rob, you're spot on. Of everything that anybody said, Rob, you are spot on. So, if anybody who knows me well knows that Justin Fitzpatrick's probably one of my best friends in the world right now. And Justin coached 19 of the 23 players that took the field for Seattle tonight at some point in their time in Seattle. Okay? And Justin and I have talked about these players and how they've come up and how they've been as they've came up. And he said that these guys can play themselves. And they have played Glendale for hardware before. And every time they played Glendale for hardware before, Seattle has won.
Now, let's for those of us, as we've got an international audience, those of us who don't know who he is and which team you're talking about here, you're talking about the Seattle Saracens here, right?
Well, yes. So Justin Fitzpatrick, who's now the coach of the Houston Sabercats, the hat I have on right now. He used to be the coach of the Seattle Saracens for 4 years. His best friend's Kevin Flynn. Kevin Flynn's the team manager of the Seattle Seawolves. Okay, so and is also the president of the Seattle Saracens, which most of the players on the Seawolves pulled from. Okay, now if you look at the Seawolves over the season, they had 33 players that played on their team over the season. Okay, 23 of them figured tonight. 10 of them that weren't on the team tonight played over the season. Only one of them played every game at the same position. That was Rasaleka. Okay, he played every game at 13, and all of them played a very consistent game. If you look at Seattle and Glendale, they had consistency at midfield, they had consistency at the back row, and they had consistency at the hinge, and then at the fullback. Both teams had consistency. And anybody who knows rugby, and Paul, Rob, go with me. Tell me if I'm wrong here. In those 4 areas of the game, if you have consistency at those areas, what is your team going to be like?
Oh, you're going to be pretty good, right? Because if for no other reason than those are the guys that are handling the ball 90% of the time might be a little high, but 3/4 of the time. Your guy throwing the lineouts is an experienced guy. Your guy at 9 is an experienced guy. Your 10 is an experienced guy. Your 12 and your first, your second receivers are experienced guys. That can only help.
And also, I mean, as you say, we've got 2 teams here. Glendale, who they're the only team that's kept the same name as the club they've come from. But as you say, in Seattle, there's been a lot of the players have come from one club. It's combinations as well, knowing what where the other person's going to be, what they're going to do, being able to trust them on defence, and that's what we've seen from these 2 teams as well, which you didn't see from teams like Utah, for example.
So not only did the players come from either one club, but they either came from one club or they came from clubs that all the players in Seattle had played against in the BC League. So it was interesting that if you look at that, with the exception of guys like Lineouts and a couple of the guys that came in from the college sides in the area, all of those guys that came down from Canada had played in the BC leagues. So all of these guys knew how each other was going to play. So there wasn't a whole lot of mystery was how this team was going to gel together. They knew exactly what to expect of each other.
Yeah, and also one of the things that they mentioned also during this is the chemistry of the team. What the culture of the team is important. Players getting on, and if you played against each other, as we saw in this game, we had Harley Davidson putting his arm, making sure one of the Seattle players was looked after and was well after had taken a big hit. So yeah, if you played against people, you've in rugby, you're going to talk to them, you're going to get on, you've had a beer after the game, so you know who the good guys are and who the idiots are, and the idiots clearly won't get selected onto the professional team.
One thing about if you've watched Sequoia Burke's combs through the years, in this match especially, his defense and his tackling has never been. He's always been a great one-up tackler, but his defensive stance, where he has chosen to put himself at. In this game, he was making the right decisions and getting himself in the right positions, and a lot of times either him or Tiberio were in the right position to stop their opposites and make sure that they pushed them back to the inside to make that one-up stop. Or in the way, if you watch the way Seattle plays, they use a 1-2 combination on their defense. They bring that 1-2 tackle in and always have a 2-man stop, so they get a negative gain on the tackle.
Yeah, and one of the things that Rob was mentioning was how little he saw of Harley Davidson in this game. And yeah, the wingers both controlled. Well, yeah, were definitely controlled. I mean, we saw in the semi-final, Cruz had a big game, but in this game he hardly. I think he made maybe 2 times where he actually got the ball, and he didn't get big breaks on either of those. So yeah, that was well
exactly. Exactly.
So we've actually run through and then we had and then finally we had the Seattle kicking a penalty at the end there to take it out to 4 points rather than just the one. Gone blank here. Make Glendale go all the way and get over the line rather than giving up a kick or a drop goal to win it. I think was definitely the right option.
Yeah, I think it certainly was.
So Rob, you're for.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You started first.
The penalty, taking the 3 was obviously the right move. The thing at the end of the game that I found shocking was when Mr. McGee was unable to find touch as sort of the last resort there when Glendale had the ball with 2 minutes left. So call it cracking, call it just a simple mistake, call it whatever you want to call it. That's the first time that I've seen a player of McGee's caliber on that team do anything like that in the whatever it was 9 games that they've played. It was a bad time. We'll put it that way.
Very bad timing. But I mean, Seattle missed touch a couple of times during this game, and World Player of the Year Bowden Barrett last night managed to kick a restart out on the full. So the best of players do make that mistake as well. It's not just not just at this level, but it was very bad timing, as you say, Rob.
They're not paying Bodie for his kicking.
No, you're paying Bodie for that pass out the back to Laumapi at the end of the match. So
that was crazy. Yes,
that was stupid. So Rob, listen. I mean, most games you have scrums and lineouts that are a lot of the game, and in the second half of this game, they weren't that much, right? In the first half, they were. Glendale seemed to own the lineouts. What did Seattle do to basically take that equation away from Seattle? Glendale.
That's a good question. I guess my instinctive answer would be fewer penalties. They gave them fewer opportunities down near the goal line. That seemed to be where Glendale was really successful with the lineout drive. There must have been a tactical adjustment at halftime that's somewhere beyond my understanding, because they had some success sacking them all where they didn't in the first, sacking legally even where they didn't in the first half. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but you're right. There was clearly a success level for Glendale with the ball in the first half that didn't repeat itself.
Yeah, one of the things I saw in the mall, especially out of the lineout, that after that first lineout, where Glendale scored a try, Seattle started actually paying attention to Phil Mack, telling players to peel off and come back to the back. They weren't paying attention to him that first maul. That second maul, they started paying attention. He would tell them to peel off and recycle. And once they started to do that and just not question his orders there and get that done, then that actually started making Glendale have to get the ball out of that maul and do something else with it. And then they were able to drive Glendale into touch and get the line out, get the turnover and move the ball with their into their own hands.
I think also Glendale got too predictable as to who they were throwing to. Because
yes, very much so.
When they threw it to the back of the line, they instantly got some more success because suddenly it wasn't where the better maul defenders had been stationed, and they got too predictable with where they were throwing it to. But Seattle also struggled. I mean, Seattle did struggle with the line out, and they had like 10 line outs in that first half. Obviously from a lot of those penalties, but too many of them went over the top. And were pretty scrappy. Glendale did a good job of disrupting that side of things. Which
oh wow,
which is why I'm a bit surprised that they didn't take there was a penalty they had on like 5 metres out, and they didn't take the scrum. They went back to the line-out maul. So I'm a bit surprised that Seattle didn't try to scrum it from there. I remember, wasn't it one of the games where they got 2 or 3 penalty tries at scrum time, or at least so I'm a bit surprised that Seattle didn't trust their scrum a bit more in that situation.
Rogers just wasn't getting his weight underneath him when he was setting into the scrum, and Metcher was just holding, not really trying to put a whole lot of energy out at the scrum in the first half. He's letting Rogers expend a lot of energy and got a couple of free kicks and penalties out of it. One of the things there is, let's get a couple of free kicks, penalties out of it, not expend a whole lot of energy, and let them expend that energy and make sure that we get those penalties and free kicks and get possession, right? That's one of the things. I think that was pretty intelligent on their part. I got to say, that's a Barkwell type of strategy. You know, having spoke to Raymundo Barkwell on Facebook a couple of times, and kind of knowing how he thinks, that's a strategy that he would have came up with.
And this goes back to, as you say, that coaching by committee. That's not been Phil Mack coaching the scrums. It sounds like Barkwell.
That's correct.
Being the guy there.
Oh yeah, very much so. And you know what? He's a pretty keen scrum coach.
And then they had again. They got like I racked up six scrums in that first half. The Seattle 22 from Glendale. So Glendale, knowing that they were going to be weaker in the scrum, needed to look after the ball and not knock it on so much. They were causing a problem for their own for themselves there.
Mm-hmm.
As well.
Well, then if you can't go forward and you can't go sideways, you're going to lose the ball. I think that's what was happening to Glendale. There was no room for them anywhere on that pitch. Seattle just played great defense as they want to do.
Cool.
Yeah, and even with Stoller out, I got to say that I love Burke Combs stepping up. You know, his I wasn't exactly sure that his defense would step up. That, you know, defense isn't all about tackling. A lot of people say that it is, right? And it's not always all about tackling. It's a lot of time it's about making sure you deny space to the ball, right? And it's something that, you know, you look down at the Southern Hemisphere game and they do very well at that. They make sure to deny space to the ball, push that thing back to the inside, make that ball move back inside where that space just isn't at, right? And Burke Combs did that tonight in a way that I honestly really haven't seen him do a lot this season. So a lot of growth from him tonight. And this is a fast, strong player that's showing growth in his game. And this is a guy who can go a long way. He's a real athlete. So if he's showing this kind of mental strength in his game, this is a good thing out of him. If we're showing this kind of growth out of him, this is a great thing to see.
I guess that's coming down to what we were talking about earlier about keeping the wingers quiet, because he was opposite, as you say, opposite Harley Davidson there this evening. I've gone through pretty much everything I'd got from the game. Are there any? Obviously, congratulations, Seattle. Actually, we haven't said that yet.
Oh yeah, man, just serious. Hey, does anybody know what the over and under was on whether the shield, if it was hoisted, was going to fall forward or backwards? That's an 80-pound, 3-foot tall shield. I mean, come on.
Somebody just had a couple of leftover Olympic plates and they turned it into a trophy.
It looks. They've gone for weight because it doesn't look very elaborate.
I was like, what? Really? What are you thinking when you're building that? Going, hey, this is a good idea. Let's make this into our trophy.
A great non-trophy related question for you. If you take like the top 15, the first team MLR guys, how many of those do you think we lose to Europe before next season? Or do you think most everybody comes back? You think so? right.
Yes, I do, and here's why. There's a lot of immigration issues going on in Europe and in England and in the UK right now, and in the US. And all of those immigration issues, and I say this because I'm moving into rugby team management right now and learning a lot about these immigration issues because I'm moving into team management. So I say this because learning about these issues, it's becoming harder for us to lose players to over there. You really have to be eligible to move over there before you're actually moving over there. You have to, just like coming over to the U.S. I mean, if you're going to come over to the U.S. To play, you either have to be eligible for a P1 visa, which means, you got to be a professional. Okay? You can't just be an exceptional player anymore and get an O1 visa. You got to be a professional. You have to be capped, or you have to have already had a professional contract somewhere. So it's not just about, being an exceptional player that, I don't know, I'm not really sure what happened at an O1 level at that point. So, but you have to have a little bit more than what you used to have, right?
So
it's harder, and it's also harder to get that in the UK. So losing these players over there, we're going to lose one or two because maybe some of those are already eligible over there, but we're not going to lose as many as we think because not all of them are eligible.
And there's also the element of that you're not going to lose them for next season. It's going to be for the season afterwards, because all the teams have already organised their squads and their playing budget for the.
But let's look at this. Let's look at a Paul Mullen. Let's talk about Paul Mullen, right? Why does Munster want to take a Paul Mullen or Ulster? What good does that do then? What do they get out of that? Based on the IRFU way of looking at things, if they take Paul Mullen into their structure, how does that help Ireland? And it really doesn't, because Paul's already capped as an Eagle, right? So he could fit into their structure, and he's got the passport and everything else, and he can go over there and easily play in their system, but he's not going to help them as a country. So really, why does he need to be in that structure? Because he's not going to really, all he's going to do is be somebody over there pushing some other prop to be better, to push up to be an Irish player. So that's really all he's there for.
And also, so the way that the Irish system works is that they had a problem probably getting on towards a decade-ish or so ago now, maybe slightly less, of having too many foreign props, essentially.
Yeah.
So they brought in a system where there's only allowed to be, across the four different provinces, there's only allowed to be one foreigner, or one non-eligible player. Let's use the right terminology here. One non-eligible player per position. So there's only across Connacht, Leinster, Munster, and I've gone blank. Oh, jeez, Ulster.
Connacht.
They can only have one scrum half that is not Irish eligible. They can only have one fly half who is not Irish eligible.
Yeah.
And so forth. So there aren't that many. So getting into Ireland, unless you're going to come and bring a experience, is extremely unlikely.
Yeah. So let's say they bring him over there. They've got a tight head prop that's pretty goddamn good tight head prop, right? And he's going to be pushing these guys to an upper level. They're going to have to be really good tight head props in order to make Ireland. So he's really making them better tight head props, but he's never going to make Ireland. They're never going to get him, he's going to be going to be getting better to play for the U.S., but is that helping Munster? Is that helping Ulster? Is that helping any of the teams he's really working for? No. They need to be developing Irish props, and that's how the Irish system works.
Plus also, if they're going to bring up, they'll sometimes look at some of the New Zealand players, because once they're out of New Zealand, they're not going to get selected by New Zealand. So you have them
right.
in the international windows to play when you need the cover. If you're taking a US international who's a current US international, he's going to want to be released back during the international windows to play for the USA. Therefore, he doesn't provide that cover either for you. So they'll be looking for players who bring experience that they can then teach to the players beneath. Obviously, fill a gap in their squad, but also preferably be someone that can fill a gap when their players when their own players aren't available as well. So that's one of the
spot on.
Where's it?
So I have
The English.
another question for Grant. What do you want to see change in this comp? Whether the comp itself, whether expansion, whatever you want. What do you want to see change between now and next April when they start up again?
Next January.
Oh, they're starting early. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So are they going to try and complete before the international window?
So a lot of we're going to see some changes next year, but yeah, you're going to start seeing games start at the end of January, I think.
Okay, so that's before Super Rugby. So Super Rugby generally starts about the second week in February.
Yeah, and you're going to start seeing it play. You're going to start seeing games play before the ARC starts.
So I think getting it up to 10 teams would be good, because having an even number rather than an odd number means you can play, or everyone can play in a weekend, rather than so your final weekend of the season you don't have someone set out already knowing they're kind of that I'd like that personally, and stepping up the production quality of the camera work are the two things I would like to see. I mean, we talked about that before, Rob.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to talk about the production work of the.
But to me, those are the two.
That's a whole different conversation. I'd like to see 10 teams next year, but I think we're going to see 9. In my opinion, 10's a stretch. In my opinion, I think we're going to see 9.
Okay, we're looking at Rugby United New York joining, which takes us up to 8.
Maybe. And Rugby United New York will be, like Seattle, will be powered by Atavis. I think you'll see. So I think you'll see Chris Prentice and his team taking over the management of both of those squads, or at least having a heavier hand in the management of both of those teams. If New York comes online.
Is that something that we want to see, though? I mean, do we really want to see the same company managing two teams?
Do we have a choice? Do we have a choice?
Okay.
I mean, it's not really an issue. I mean, do we have a choice, really?
Well, the only issue is the appearance of a conflict of interest, right?
So what I think is Chris Prentice's the Prentice family's sons are graduating college and high school and whatever, and I think what he's probably ended up doing is building a legacy so his children, and he's really big on building the legacy for his children, both he and his wife. But they're big on building a legacy so their children can have something once they're done with college. And so it would not surprise me, and I'm not saying that this is what it is. I'm making a guess. Yep. It would not surprise me if the New York arm is something that he ends up basically delivering to one of his sons or his daughter or own in the end. Just my guess on the issue. Interesting.
And I guess the other one that's obviously been playing quite a lot of games is it Ontario? I want to say Ontario Archers.
Arrows.
Mm-hmm.
Arrows. Sorry.
The Arrows. So I think Bill Webb has a great concept there, and I really want Bill Webb to get that going. Because he's got Winnie going on with him. I just love their organization and what they're trying to do. You know, when they came down to Houston last year or this past spring, they had a really good thing going. They were really tight. They played us close. Loved what they had going on. Shepherd, those guys, just wow. You know, can't say enough good things about them. Want to see those guys succeed, because if we can get at least one Canadian entry to start, I think 4 Canadian entries is the max we could run out of that to have in the league. But 4 Canadian entries makes this a very strong league. And down the road, I think I can let this out of the bag, because I'm not in the know, even though I'm in the know. I'm never actually signed an NDA, and I know some things.
Don't worry.
In the end, there's a lot of people watching. Trust me, so in the end, there's supposed to be a North America and a South America MLR type competition.
Yep.
And those are going to be there will be a cross competition between them, and that competition will have. We'll see. I mean, much like what you see in the European competitions, where you have your Pro 14, your Aviva Premierships, your Top 14. They have their own little competitions, and then they have your European Cup, European Challenges. These will have their, your Pseudo-Americano MLR, your North American MLR, and then they're going to have their, they're basically their America's Championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what you see in that shield right there. That's the America's Rugby Championship shield. So don't be surprised if that becomes the shield that everybody's after.
Even with the big letters MLR on it.
MLR, Major League Rugby. Okay. So, I mean, that's what I think is down the road. Now, I don't have anything in writing that I've seen or anything to confirm. Nobody's told me anything that says that's true, but I've been around enough that I think that that's exactly where that's going to.
Yeah, no,
I'm pretty sure that's what World Rugby wants to happen. I think Gus Pachot's got his hands in enough things going down in South America that he likes the MLR action that's happening in North America, that he wants the same thing going on in South America between the different countries. There's a little bit more freedom down there, between the countries to do this kind of thing without having to worry about cross-border immigration issues like we do up here in Canada and the U.S. So, let's let it happen. They just have to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, and that South American professional club competition is on the cards. I can't remember if it's trying to start next year or the year after. I think next year will be rushing it, but yeah, it sounds it's definitely on the cards. And already people have said, let's have a cross competition, which I think I agree with. I'm just not sure it would be the same trophy. That would be the only.
No, it may not be, but it may not be, but hey, it's nice to speculate, right?
Absolutely.
I don't speculate a whole lot.
Where's the fun if we don't?
Other unused Olympic plates that you could take and weld together and make a trophy out of.
So that would take it up to 9 teams if we had the Arrows and Rugby United joining in, and obviously Washington DC is 2020. Don't also Vancouver and Chicago also be talking about teams, but I've not heard as much concrete stuff out of those two teams, those two players.
And what's that? I'm sorry, what's that?
So Paul was saying that the other two possibilities for franchises he's heard are in Vancouver and Chicago, and I threw in a third. I've heard some rumblings in LA.
So let's, Vancouver and Chicago are on the back burner at the moment, and not a bad back burner. Just they're trying to make sure everything's right first. Let's talk. Understand that they're trying to make everything's right. They don't have enough money. They just want to make sure everything's in the right place before they start. Right. LA is a big deal. Stuart Proctor's got everything going right, and this guy, Stuart, knows his shit. He's put in about $25,000 to get a 120-day window to prove his mettle. So he's already paid $25,000 to the Major League Rugby to get a 120-day window to get a 2019 entry. So he's got he's got probably 115 days now to prove that he can meet all the benchmarks that Major League Rugby has set for him to get into the 2019 season. And that's, a head coach of X level of status. Get the bond level of whatever the 2019 bond level is set at, so you can pay for logistics and salary cap and whatever else you have to, in insurance and whatever else you have to pay for, right? Because the bond level is basically you're paying into the league to pay for all those basic league expenses up front before the season starts, so that those things are paid for, so that the league can happen without having to worry about reneging on anything.
Does
that make sense?
California is always finding.
Go ahead, Rob. Well, and finding the venue, I think they've already got a couple of 3 venues in mind, but yeah, that's a benchmark that they've set for that team.
Wasn't there a team, did Pro Rugby have one in LA or somewhere around there? So
no, they had one in San Diego. San Diego Breakers.
San Francisco, wasn't it?
Yeah, they played at Torero.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then there were 4 different entities inquiring around Los Angeles. Stewart's entity put their money down first for the first 120-day window. That means the other 3 entities have to wait until he either meets or doesn't meet his benchmarks until they can move forward. So those other 3 entities are on the bubble right now. They're just sitting there waiting until Stewart either screws the pooch or he makes it happen. So, and I know there's an entity up in Sacramento right now trying to make an entry. There's an entry, Paul Sheehy's out in Washington, D.C. They've got a window that they've got a little longer runway that they've bought into, that they're trying to get going. They understand they need a longer runway. Smart move on Paul Sheehy's part in Washington, D.C. There's an entity in Atlanta making inquiries. There's an entity in Dallas, but I'm pretty sure Donnie Nelson in Dallas, he's the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, an NBA team. I'm pretty sure he understands that he needs to kind of have a longer runway and get into the 2020 entry in order to settle a bunch of issues up there that he needs to settle before he actually makes an entry. So,
yeah, like fixing his basketball team.
I don't think it's about the basketball team, but yeah, okay.
Those ones have been less. If they haven't reached my ears, they've been less public than some of the other ones. So yeah, presumably they're a bit further behind in their.
Yeah, but anytime you guys want to talk to me about this, you guys are welcome to ask. Right?
It's what we're doing right now. This half-hour show is coming up to the hour mark now, which is good.
Well, this is the final. We should be allowed to have a lot of leeway, right?
Oh, we've always got leeway. Unless there's another game coming up, which there isn't, so that's all good. I was going to suggest we get back together again and have a Major League Rugby awards show and have some.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Rob, what do you think?
Absolutely. Although I'm worried that Paul's suggesting we have to sit here until January because that's when the next game is.
Hey, so here's what I suggest. Let's get together Sunday without a show and talk about it, and then do a show whenever Paul wants to do a show after we've got our action items.
Happy to.
Okay.
Sounds good. I'm a bit busy next 2 weekends. I've got my girls, But so it'll be a couple of weekends away, I think, before we do that. But yeah.
Okay. All on you, Paul. You just let us know when to meet.
Well, thank you, guys.
We're watching Super Rugby until then.
Sure.
Rob, you gonna be in San Francisco?
I am. I barely even have to take a bus ride to get there. I live about 20 miles away.
Goodness.
So,
Okay, so we're gonna have to meet up. So, after this is over, send me a Facebook request or whatever, a Twitter request or something.
absolutely.
And let's make sure we meet up in San Francisco because my wife and I will be there.
Great.
For those of you wondering, that's there for the World Sevens is what we're talking about on that one. How long away are we from that now?
2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Ooh, that'll be the same weekend as the quarterfinals for the Super Rugby.
Oh goodness, will it be the quarterfinals?
Yeah, so next weekend is the final.
That weekend will be non-stop, will it, Rob?
Well, it won't even just be nonstop rugby. It'll be nonstop other things, too.
Oh, my goodness. We're going to be...
Having been to sort of 4 or 5 Hong Kong sevens.
If I know a dealer in San Francisco I can hit up.
Find something, Grant. We'll find you something.
So having been to a number of Hong Kong sevens, it's always a good idea to take the next week off on holiday if you can.
So here's the deal. So I'm coming back. I get back from World Cup Sevens at 1 a.m. in the morning on Tuesday morning, right? Okay,
Ouch.
so, which, ouch, right? At 10 a.m. that morning, I have the groundbreaking ceremony for the Houston SaberCats Stadium.
Oh dear! And are you doing PA for that, or you?
No, I just I've done all the social media for that, and I've got to be there because I'm kind of part of the SaberCats family now. As I'm moving into this team management role for the D1 men's side that they're funding with West Houston Lions now, so kind of have to be there. So if you guys haven't seen it,
Why? So it'll only be like 117 degrees with 119% humidity. So the 4 days of drinking you've just done will be just fine.
Oh, because I haven't ever had heat exhaustion at all in my life. So yeah. So yeah, if you guys haven't seen it, either go to my Facebook page or go to the subreddit for r/MLR Rugby. ML Rugby, and you can look at the SaberCats announced stadium groundbreaking for 24 July, and it'll show you a basic rendering of what the stadium will look like. It'll be a stadium with 2 fields next to it, 760 car parking area next to it, be next to a major artery of highway in town, and about 2 miles from one of the major hubs. We have 2 major international airports here in town, and it'll be about 2 miles from one of those.
So with 3 pitches, you could definitely host a good sevens tournament for the weekend.
Oh yeah, no, and not only that, we plan to host a couple of All-Star 15s tournaments over the time. So yeah. So it's definitely something we good. I think the stadium will kick off at about 3,500. The stadium's supposed to start off once the build's done to hold about 3,500 people, and it's also supposed to be modular so it can be built onto time to time and grow up to whatever it's going to grow up to. I think they're going to announce that at the groundbreaking ceremony because it has different phases that it can grow up to. And it also is going to be 70 meters wide by 140 meters long.
Which, oh dear. So does that put it at the larger end or the of I'm not.
It is a full size playing enclosure with 20 meter deep end goals.
Ooh. Proper in-goals.
Yes, proper in-goals. So
yes. If you want to, if you've got a long kicker, just water the in-goals a lot before the game, and then just kick them and chase.
Here's the deal. The grass for these fields, all three of the fields, has been growing already. There's some paddocks down in Brazoria County, which is about 50 miles south of where I'm at right now, that have been growing the grass for a few months already. And when the contractor says that the surface is ready for the grass, about 2 a.m. in the morning, they go in there, they roll up the grass down on the paddocks, they transport it up to the fields, and they roll it out about an hour later. Wow. And that's how long it takes. So it takes an hour basically to roll it up and then roll it out, and then the grass is right there. It's already set, and when they roll it, they actually cut it at like 6 inches of sod deep. So it's not like 2 inches of sod. It's like 6 inches of sod. They do some serious cutting when they put that stuff down. They've got a lot of roots in there, and they make sure it's a good depth of a good root depth and everything else. So when they do put that down, it's going to be some serious sod. And I think, and I haven't talked to Mark, the architect, and this guy's brilliant. I love talking to this guy because he talks in this language that I swear is Klingon half the time. Okay. But he really talks in this beautiful language that is almost artistic. And he really wants this thing to be a wonderful thing that every fan enjoys. So his idea of the stadium is something that it doesn't matter where you're at in the stadium, your eyeballs enjoy what's on the field.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so we got good side lines, got no blocking pillars, all of that kind of stuff, which is good.
Yeah.
And we also been one of the things we've enjoyed about the Major League Rugby this year is also seeing a bit of having the different watching cultures in different places. So seeing the brass band down in NOLA, obviously the loud booing by the Seawolves fans.
Seawolves.
And just having that difference, you can tell which ground you're kind of watching, because you can hear some of the atmosphere that's different in each place as well. And so hopefully we'll see something that's, I don't know what quintessentially is Houston from that point of view, but it'll be interesting to see what comes up that way as well.
Well, honestly,
just like in the Naki,
put together a project like that in the span of time that they did. That's quintessentially Houston. That's probably the only part of the country where something like they're getting done down there could have been done as quickly as they're doing it. So, hats off.
This took 3 years, right?
I live in California. It would have taken 26.
So this is actually the third rendition. This stadium would have been built already had it not been for Hurricane Harvey. If Hurricane Harvey would not have hit, we probably would have been playing in this stadium already. Because Hurricane Harvey hit last year, there's a bayou that runs right next to where the stadium will be built at, called Sims Bayou. About 2 and 3 miles west of Sims Bayou, there's a large flooding area that Sims Bayou flooded at upstream, and it caused a study to have to be done as to how they were going to deepen and widen Sims Bayou, which caused all construction within a half mile of Sims Bayou to be stopped. So if you had permits, you couldn't build. Well, this stadium is not just within a half mile of Sims Bayou. It's right on it, spot on it. I mean, so this stadium is actually 12 feet above top of banks of Sims Bayou right next to it. Okay, so they had to stop. What?
You're making my point. You got a stadium in 3 years with an intervening hurricane. I'm an Oakland A's fan. I've been waiting for a stadium since 1992.
There you go. So so yeah. Once the study got done and everything was figured out that hey, this stadium would not negatively affect the Bayou change, then the stadium was okay to go through. Now, of course, the councilman that is over the district that the stadium's in owns the concrete. Well, no, he doesn't. His cousin owns the concrete company that the stadium is going to be using to get all their concrete at. So
getting sign off was easy.
Yeah, getting sign off was simple. So, this is Houston. That's how things happen. If you ever want to know just exactly how Houston operates, go look up Hunter S. Thompson's quote on Houston. Okay? Just go look it up, because that is exactly how Houston operates.
What's the quote? I had too much LSD last week?
Oh, give me a second. I'll find it. It's real easy to find.
But I think it's these kind of things. I think a lot of, there has been obviously a small amount of criticism about some of the grounds from some of the fans who haven't really kind of understood that. Yeah, that these kind of things have been in place, and they do happen. And it is good. I think one of the sort of tenets of Major League Rugby is that they actually want the teams to own the grounds rather than sort of be municipal grounds, which is. And if you look at the teams that are successful in England, it's the ones that own their grounds and can generate revenue from that. Teams like Exeter Chiefs, etc., Leicester Tigers, ones that sort of borrow a football ground like London Irish are the ones that kind of struggle a bit more. Okay,
so here's Hunter S. Thompson on Houston. So everybody, Paul, do you know who Hunter S. Thompson was?
No.
Okay, so he is the founder of Gonzo Journalism, which, by the way, you do. Okay? Okay. Houston is a cruel, crazy town on a filthy river in East Texas, with no zoning laws and a culture of sex, money, and violence. It's a shabby, sprawling metropolis ruled by brazen women, crooked cops, and super-rich pansexual cowboys who live by the code of the West, which can mean just about anything you need it to mean in a pinch.
Well, there we go. Oh, dear.
It's all right. He left out the weather, but other than that, he's got it.
Oh, man, the weather is crazy down here. But anyway, that's Houston in a nutshell.
Oh, dear. Well, gentlemen, should we end on that note, or
we should end on that note? We did cover it all.
I think we've covered it all.
So we're going to come back. We're going to meet up, and then we're going to talk about our end of the year accolades, and then we're going to come back and actually do an end of the year show at some point.
That's the plan.
Wow, that's awesome.
And
I'm going to meet up with Rob in San Francisco in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Tony's going to be there too.
Yeah, and Rob, I'm actually getting to town early and going to go over to Berkeley, meet up with Jack Clark. He's going to give me a tour of campus.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So,
well, thank you everyone for watching. If you're still here, an hour and 15 minutes in, congratulations, well done. I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul. Always up for good rugby chats, so comments down below, much appreciated. Like, subscribe, that kind of stuff. And Grant, where can people get hold of your wonderful comment?
Man, you can always find me at Rugby Evangelist on Twitter, or you can look up the Rugby Evangelist on Facebook anytime you want.
And Rob, where can people get to follow your blog?
Rugby in America, and there's a link to the blog on there. The blog's called The Rugby Falcon.
So it's at Rugby in America on Twitter. Sorry, I've taken the labels off because the screen was shifting around, but you'll have seen those during the middle of the show, so catch us all there. And dial back in for the end of season awards that we're going to put together.